Okay, let's dive right in. So imagine this. You try logging onto X, maybe just scrolling, maybe posting something, and bam, account's frozen. And this isn't just some temporary glitch. You've actually gone through the whole appeal process. You've waited. And then that email lands, the one that says pretty clearly, your account was suspended due to violations of X rules. After reviewing for reinstatement, your account will not be restored. Oof, that feeling, suddenly locked out, that digital silence. It's jarring.
It absolutely is. Like hitting a digital brick wall, really.
Yeah.
And that specific situation, account frozen, appeal rejected, that's exactly what we've been digging into with the sources you send over.
Yeah.
We looked at a mix of things, articles, user experiences, people share online, some analysis of X's own policies, all current as of, May 24, 2025.
Right. And our mission today is really to unpack this, try to cut through the confusion. When that appeal gets shot down, what really happens next? According to this material, what are the official options, if any exist?
Right.
And what about the unofficial stuff people try? The workarounds? And crucially, what are the risks involved there? Ultimately, what does this all tell us about, getting back on the platform, or even just managing your digital footprint after what seems like a final decision? Is permanent really, truly permanent here?
Well, based on everything we've reviewed, that email, the one saying your account won't be restored after the review, that seems about as definitive as X gets.
Okay.
It strongly suggests they've looked at it again post-suspension, they've denied the appeal, and from their perspective, that suspension is permanent.
And our sources really seem to back that up, don't they? They point to X's official policy saying that if an appeal after suspension is rejected, getting the account back is described as usually difficult.
Yeah, usually difficult.
Which honestly feels like a bit of an understatement in this context, right?
It really does. From X's stated position, it seems like that standard appeal path is, effectively closed once you get that rejection.
So if getting back into the account is pretty much off the table, the next logical thought has to be, okay, fine. Can I at least just delete the thing, erase it?
That makes perfect sense. But here's the snag we found in the material. When your account's suspended, you can't log in. At all.
Right.
And if you can't log in, you can't get to your account settings, which is where you'd normally find the button to, deactivate or delete it.
Okay. Because the normal way is clicking to deactivate my account from inside your own profile.
Exactly. But the sources do point to another potential route, an official one, submitting a deletion request directly through X's Help Center.
Okay, so there is a channel. And the steps listed in the sources sound straightforward enough.
Yeah.
Visit the Help Center, pick I'd like to deactivate or close my account, fill in the info, submit. Easy.
On paper, yeah. And X apparently processes these and gets back to you by email. But this is where a really big question mark pops up, and it's mentioned across different sources. There's absolutely no guarantee your account will actually be deleted immediately or, frankly, ever.
Wait, seriously? No guarantee?
Yeah.
Even if I'm the one asking for my own account to be deleted? That's kind of unsettling.
It is a bit unsettling. The sources explain that X might actually need to hang on to certain account data. Sometimes it's for legal reasons, things like that. And if that's the case, they could just refuse your deletion request.
Wow. So even if you, the user, are saying, I want this gone, they might just say, nope, we're keeping it. That really highlights how little control you might actually have over your data once it's on these platforms, especially after a suspension.
Yeah.
Our research found user experiences that seemed to confirm this too, right? Like Reddit threads where people were in this exact spot, frozen account, couldn't deactivate, and couldn't even seem to get a clear answer from X about deleting it.
That's right. The user reports seem to align with the policy analysis here. There is an official request form, yes, but whether it works seems totally up to X. And practically speaking, getting it deleted can be really tough, maybe impossible, especially if they decide they need to keep the data for some reason.
Okay, so direct login is blocked. Requesting deletion is, let's call it a long shot, no guarantees. So what's the next thought bouncing around in someone's head? Almost certainly it's, fine, forget the old account, I'll just make a new one.
And this is where you run smack into something X explicitly forbids in their rules.
Yeah.
According to the policies we looked at, making a new account after your original one was suspended is a no-go.
Right.
They call it ban evasion.
Ban evasion. Okay, sounds like exactly what it is, trying to sneak back in.
Pretty much. And trying it is a direct violation of X's terms of use. As the sources point out, this can and likely will lead to the suspension of the new account, too. Their terms mention shutting down accounts due to risks or legal issues, and, well, ban evasion fits right in there.
But let's be real. despite that clear rule, the sources did acknowledge that people do try this, right? They
Yeah.
try to create new accounts and somehow stay under the radar.
Oh, absolutely. And the material you gave us actually details some of the tactics people apparently use. Things like, the basics, using a totally different email address, a different phone number. We saw that mentioned in the Circle Boom blog, for example.
Okay. And do they suggest going further, like trying to hide who you are digitally?
Yes. Trying to use a different device entirely and changing their IP address. One source, a Business First article, mentioned things like resetting your home router or maybe using a VPN to get a fresh IP.
Makes sense. What about the profile itself?
Also key, users apparently try to completely change their username, their profile picture, all the info, really.
Right.
Anything to break the link to the old suspended account. That was another thing mentioned in the Circle Boom piece.
Right.
And maybe most importantly, being super careful to follow all of X's rules on the new account, not repeating whatever got them suspended in the first place.
So people are putting in some serious effort here.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned it's high risk.
Extremely high risk. That's a really consistent warning we saw across the sources, all these methods. They're attempts to get around X's stated policies. And X isn't dumb. They have sophisticated tools.
How so?
They can link accounts in ways beyond just email or phone. They might use IP address history, unique device identifiers like a digital fingerprint for your phone or computer, and maybe even analyze behavior patterns, like do you post about the same topics in the same way?
Wow, okay. And this isn't just theoretical risk, right? The user report suggests X actually catches people doing this.
They definitely do. When we looked into forums like Reddit and Quora, we found quite a few reports from users saying their new accounts were frozen immediately, sometimes within minutes or hours of creation.
Immediately, ouch.
Yeah, it shows that X's systems are actively looking for this kind of ban evasion and can be pretty quick to shut it down.
So the bottom line here seems pretty clear. Trying to sneak back onto X with a new account is explicitly against their rules, no matter how clever you think you're being with new emails or IPs. And there's a very real, significant chance that the new account will just get zapped almost instantly. It's a gamble, and X is set up to catch you.
Exactly. You have to understand you're breaking the rules from the get-go, and you might need to take some pretty extensive steps to even have a chance, none of which guarantee you won't get caught.
Right.
One source even mentioned a user suggestion, and this has zero official backing, mind you, that maybe waiting a few weeks or months could potentially lower the detection risk. But again, that's just speculation against a very clear policy.
Okay. So given the fuzziness around deletion and the definite high risk of trying to create a new account, what did the material ultimately point to as the, let's say, best solutions or potential paths forward for someone stuck in this mess? If they want to use X again or just, move on?
Well, the sources laid out a few options, framing them as the most viable approaches. First, there's that official deletion request we talked about, submitting the form through the Help Center.
Which, we need to keep saying, is presented as worth a shot, but comes with that massive caveat.
Yeah.
Success is totally up to X, no promises.
Correct. It's really the only official way mentioned to even ask for removal when you're locked out. Second, if someone does decide to roll the dice and try creating a new account, despite knowing it's against the rules, the sources really hammer home the need for serious risk management. That means doing all that stuff we discussed, different email, different phone, different device, different IP if possible, completely new profile info, and crucially, being squeaky clean regarding X's rules on that new account.
And let's repeat it one more time.
Yeah.
This is still trying to bypass their policy. It is risky. And the sources use phrases like adequate measures, which implies it's not simple or foolproof.
Precisely. It's listed more as something users attempt, but the risks are front and center. And then finally, maybe the most practical advice in the end.
Which is?
The material suggests just considering other platforms. If getting back on X looks impossible or just too risky, maybe it's time to look at Instagram, Facebook, or whatever else fits.
Basically, find a different digital hangout.
Yeah, it's presented as a realistic alternative if X remains closed off.
Interesting. The sources also flagged some other user comments seen on X itself.
Right.
Even if they didn't perfectly match this specific post-rejection situation.
Yeah.
Like an Ask Perplexity post suggesting you appeal first and then delete using the settings after the account's back.
Right, which makes sense if your account is just, say, temporarily limited or something.
Yeah.
But it doesn't help here because the appeal failed and the account is still frozen. You can't get to those settings.
Gotcha. And there was another one, a Gronk post, mentioning needing an appeal for account removal, especially if you were hacked.
Yeah. Similar issue. It points towards using official processes, but again, doesn't really tackle what you do after that appeal is definitively rejected and the suspension holds.
Okay.
But what is consistent across these different user posts, even if they aren't perfectly on point for our scenario, is this general idea.
Hmm.
Any action you want to take regarding a suspended account, even just getting rid of it, seems to require going through X's official channels.
Even if those channels are limited or, as we've seen, maybe don't offer guarantees.
Exactly. That seems to be the common understanding among users based on the sources.
The material also briefly dipped into the legal side, the privacy aspects.
It did, yeah. It brought up a theoretical point about Japan under their Personal Information Protection Act. Users there might technically have grounds to request data deletion.
But trying to enforce Japanese law on a U.S. company sounds tricky.
That's the complexity highlighted. X is primarily an American company. It operates under U.S. law mainly, though the sources noted they do comply with things like CCPA in California and GDPR in Europe. But how enforceable a specific country's law, like Japan's, is against X's decisions about keeping data, especially after a rules violation and suspension? It's likely limited. In the end, it seems like whether your data or account actually gets deleted still largely comes down to X's own discretion.
Regardless of where you live or what local laws might say on paper.
That seems to be the practical reality suggested by the sources.
Okay, so let's try to pull together the main takeaways from this deep dive based on the material you looked through.
Yeah, sure. First, big one. Getting an X account restored after an appeal against suspension has been formally rejected is considered very, very difficult, probably close to impossible through standard means.
Okay, and deletion.
You can submit a request via the help center since you can't log in, but, and it's a big but, there's absolutely no guarantee X will actually delete it. They might keep the data for their own reasons, like legal compliance.
Got it. And the tempting idea of just starting fresh with a new account.
That's a clear violation of X's ban evasion policy. It's extremely risky. People try various workarounds, new emails, IPs, devices, but X actively looks for this and often suspends the new accounts almost immediately. Trying this means you're knowingly operating outside the rules from square one, and success is really just a gamble. It requires you to be aware of those significant risks and maybe take some pretty complex steps to avoid detection, none of which are foolproof, while knowing you're still breaking the terms of service.
Right. This whole deep dive paints a, well, pretty stark picture, doesn't it, of what happens when that X suspension appeal gets rejected. So thinking about all these specific challenges our research surfaced, how hard it is to get an account back, how you might not even be able to delete your own data when suspended, even if you ask, and the huge risks tied to trying to make a new account against the rules. What does this really suggest about the control we think we have versus the control we actually have over our digital identities on these massive platforms like X, especially once we hit a snag with their policies? It definitely makes you wonder where that data truly lives and who's ultimately calling the shots, doesn't it?